So today we are going to see about advanced concepts in Spring Security. Actually speaking, this title itself is confusing. Based on my experience, I see that advanced is actually two things. Either advanced is very basic. For example, we keep claiming the data structures, design patterns are advanced because that's how we were being taught, but actually they are very, very basic. Similarly, there are concepts that we may not understand. This is not so in our case, actually, what we are going to talk today is something very, very, very basic. But the thing is, people don't talk about this usually, and that's why we claim that it's actually advanced. But otherwise, the topics that we discuss today, it's for everyone, and we all can understand that it's very simple and straightforward. So we will make it interactive as usual. Any doubts in between a session also, don't hesitate to ask it. You can unmute yourself and then you can ask. That's how we go. Now we are going to start with security, but we are not going with the technical aspects directly now. First, we will just think about the security in real time. For example, if you are actually managing a company and you want your employees to, for example, you are managing a hotel. You want your employees to get into the hotel and then start cooking, start preparing everything for your customers. So you want to check whether your employees are coming in. So in this case, you will provide an ID card. These are the things that you should have listened many times, but we'll just keep revisiting just for everybody's sake. There are two things actually in security. One is called authentication, and another one is called authorization. Can anyone in our team tell the difference between these two words?
So authentication is describes who can access the resource, and authorization is what they can do with the resource.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, fine. So authentication is something like, I mean, you are validating your user. Someone getting into it, you just want to identify them. Okay, this is actually a user. So that's why you call it as authentication. Your ID card is basically an authentication. Consider that your ID card is an authentication. But then your ID card, with your ID card, you can see whether this person that you are talking about, he might be a software engineer or a BA or a manager or a testing engineer. So based on the role that they play, they might be able to do different operations, and that's how you categorize authorization. For today's thing, we will conveniently avoid this one. This we'll see in detail later. That's also a big topic that we'll see later. But authentication. Now there are various ways of authenticating. It's not going to be same way that you're authenticating an employee or your guest or your vendor. So it's going to be different for different people, different entry points that they have in real time. And just match that with your technology. We will first discuss about the non-technical aspect, and then we will map that knowledge into the technical side of it. That's how we will understand things clearly. Now first thing, ID card. In ID card case, what is happening is you are actually providing your username as well as your password. You say, okay, I'm actually this person. I claim that with this password. So you are going to verify, your security is going to verify, okay, whether these two are actually matching. If these two are matching, you are going to allow it. Now, in employee's case, usually how it happens. Okay, now let us just see how it happens from the REST API perspective. Now, you are just going to talk to your security officer, and then you are saying, okay, this is what I provide us. That's my credentials. Rather than I call it as a claim, the credentials is what you actually pass. Once you pass the credentials, if it is matching, your security officer is going to give you your principal. So what is this principle is? This security officer is going to say, okay, I actually verified this background, and he is actually Satish, and then his password is correct. So you can claim that this is basically Satish from software engineering team, and that's what he is going to claim. Now that is what you are actually seeing here. So you are passing your user name and password, and this person will verify it and then tell you, actually this is so-and-so user, and this user has a role so-and-so. Okay, so this is what happens in terms of a basic authentication. But in a world that we live today, whether this username password is valid, no, it may not be valid always, because sometimes you might have short-living users. Sometimes you might be providing certain services for the user that for that services they need it. And usually nowadays people actually prefer token-based authentication. So before we get into the technical aspects of it, let us see what is token-based authentication is. Token is something that you can see in real time. For example, if you are if you are going to get a coffee from a tea shop, sometimes you see that they will be providing you some tokens. You will provide the token. There will be different tokens. For coffee, you will buy one token. For tea, you will buy another token. For milk, you will buy another token. Now, can anyone tell me what is that token actually consist of in real time, not technical world? What is the purpose of token? I can always say username, password, right? But what is the purpose of token?
So I think it identifies the client. So whenever a client visits again with the token, so it's a valid client.
Who is this? Rajesh, right?
Rajesh, yeah.
Okay, Rajesh, the first half, as much as possible, we will discuss without any technical words. For example, rather we say client, identify, let us keep it very, very simple. Now, let us take a tea shop. Now, I want to give a tea. I don't care who brings the token, actually. They might have obtained the token by giving money, but or otherwise paying through Google Pay or whatever it is. But ultimately, what matters when I'm providing tea, that is my service. All that matters is in the token, it will say, okay, this token is for tea. And that's what I'm going to give. Okay, but now there is a catch here. If you are giving, the tokens are much simplified here because it doesn't need it doesn't need to verify you again. Who are you? Whether your credentials are correct. Nothing can be. Nothing need to be verified. You can just say, okay, this token is there. You just give it. But things get complex with token actually. For example, now you are going for a movie and you buy a ticket. You are buying a ticket for today's 5:30 show. Can you use the same ticket for tomorrow 5:30 show, or can you use it for a different movie? And how that particular person in ticket counter identifies that his token is valid only for this movie, this timing. How is it identified?
Based on the timestamp and date, I think.
Exactly. So your ticket, the ticket that you have contains the tickets you usually call in real life, contains, say, for example, movie name, show time, screen number. These are all the data of the token. So these are all printed on your ticket. So ticket is token, consider that way. So in token-based thing, tokens go with the simplicity of checking actually. That's one advantage. Apart from that, you can specifically say, this is what you need to do for this token. And that's why you actually use token-based authentications are encouraged usually, because even though it's claimed by someone, you can precisely go, okay, for this time, for this particular person, only these are all the items in my book should be allowed. And user can actually define what he wants to perform with specific token. For example, if you are using GitHub or if you are using AWS services, when you create a token, you can specifically say, even though this token is created from Satish, it is not like you can perform anything that Satish can do with tokens. At the time of creating the token, you can choose from the list of what Satish can do. You can say, okay, this is all that this particular token can do on behalf of Satish. Am I making sense? Any doubts? Please let me know. Because as we go further, we will revisit this concept later. So the tokens provide you two advantages. One is it becomes stateless. You don't need to again say, for example, your data is your verification service is there somewhere in your remote location, and every time you need to reach that person and then ask, okay, this is the credential, tell me whether this is correct. This is the credential, tell me this is correct. That is no longer required because this is going to happen only once. After that, it is stateless. So that's an advantage. And the second advantage is by having tokens, you can precisely, you can fine tune your access even under an user. Usually without token, you can just set a role specific to the user. So if someone brings that username password, anything that user can do, that particular authentication can also do. But now that option is eliminated. That's why these modern day cloud services, they usually go with, they promote token-based services. So this is the non-technical aspects of it. So now every time I say token, yes, please go ahead. Someone is asking doubt.
Satish, I have just one small doubt. So Aditya here, I just have one doubt. So you mentioned that with the token, we don't even authenticate, right? So what if I just use your token and if I just perform something, how will the system know that I'm a different kind of person rather than Satish? And how will it authenticate that particular purpose?
Very good, Aditya. Okay. So Aditya, here it is. Okay. So before we see the token, how do we generate the token? There are two things, right? You generate a token. and then you pass token. Okay, here when you generate it, you are still passing your credentials. You are passing your credentials, right? So if you do not know your credential, you cannot even generate a token. So it's your token. Ultimately, if you give this token to somebody else, of course they will access. But the rule is you should not give your credential. You should not give your tokens also. The only difference the token makes is, otherwise for every call 1 you need to pass credential, call 2 you need to pass credential. In this case, the only difference that we do is your flow is like call 1 it is credential, call 2 from so on it is just tokens. Did I answer your question, Aditya?
Yeah, Sadish, thanks a lot.
Okay, yeah, okay. Now, just keep this in mind. Technology is very, very easy, particularly the things that is coming newly. These technologies are made much, much simpler. But only thing is that we need to have that perspective of how we are going to look at it. If you look at it properly, the technologies will be easier. Now, we will get into that little bit of code aspects. So how Spring Security works. There are two things actually. Spring Security and authentication may not be matching with each other directly, but first we need to understand how Spring sees this particular ecosystem of authentication and authorization. Before I go into the detail, this is the whole purpose that we are doing this training actually. And I face these problems and I just want to make sure that these problems are not there. Nowadays, if you see any samples in Spring Security, Spring Boot, authentication and all this, usually the problem that I see, most of the samples are done with JPAs, but JPAs have nothing to do with what we are discussing. So I intentionally remove JPA. You don't see any JPA in what we do. And these samples are written with Angular and React. You have nothing to do with Angular or React. It's basically REST API security. And what we are going to discuss today, we don't need to confuse with OAuth. OAuth is just an enhanced layer. This is very, very basic that we are trying to do. And most important thing is, many of the samples that you see today, sometimes they might have, if they are written before 2018, they might have written with the old version of Spring Security that is very different from what we have today. So always be wary of the legacy code. This is why it was actually confusing. And there are people behind it. We will go to that people a little later. And there are some common mistakes that we'll see later. We will see as we go along. Now, I am going to move this security into token-based security. That's my intention that I'm trying to do here. Okay, now again I'm going to this. So in token-based system, what is the first difference that you are trying to make? You need to provide an endpoint. So let us define the term correctly. Endpoint is nothing but any REST endpoint that you create, right? That's called endpoint. That is basically a point where you have some end goal to achieve. In this case, we want to create a token. So here you are passing a credential. You want to create a token. That's what you intend to do. Okay. Now let us see how this is going to be implemented. So in this sample that you see, I removed everything just to keep it as simple as possible. We will see the security config. Okay. Before we go to the further details, let us see how it actually works. I'm just intentionally running it in a debug mode. So I have a controller. So in this controller, I just want to see who am I. So I'm actually I need to print my principal object. So based on my principal object, I want to get my user details and then return. So if I'm passing some credentials, this is going to check with the database and then tell me where my user credentials are. So here you see user detail service. I have created an in-memory user detail service. So just for someone who gets started with Spring Security, there are a lot of concepts, but these are all the concepts that you should be knowing. Security config is a place where you add what are the endpoints that you want to safeguard. You are basically going to configure your security. And after that, there will be something called authentication managers. So authentication manager can contain multiple authentication providers. And these providers will in turn talk to your user detail service. And this user detail service is the one for whom you pass your username, they will provide you the user details. In production case, it might be coming from your databases. It might be relational database, or it might be from file system or whatever it is. But ultimately, a user detail service is responsible for providing users, and you can search based on the username that you can do. And this is what going to be called every time you are hitting an authentication service. Now that's what you are seeing here. I have created a user with hard-coded password, and then he performs a role user. And with that, if I'm hitting this service, so I'm just providing my basic authorization here, and then I want application JSON, and I just want to understand who am I. Then it actually hits your controller. So it comes to the controller, that's what we see. And then the principal object is populated. Okay, now I have a question. What is the first entry point for Spring Boot application? It is controller, correct? Is controller the entry point for Spring Boot application? And who is the correct entry point for Spring Boot application? In a sense, web applications.
Servlet.
Exactly. So even though we write controller, don't assume that it is the controller that actually gets the request directly. There are a lot of people who gets hold of your request before your controller. And in fact, those are all the people who will perform all the magics that we claim Spring Boot is powerful. So it's important for us to understand what is happening behind the hood. Actually, I put a debugger already. I think that's why it came here directly. So now you see, every time you send a request, I'm going to send the request again. See, here is my controller. We'll go by the flow. We will build from here. We will see it in detail today. We'll go slow and steady. Now, so it returned this. But now let us look at the actual flow. When you make a request, first of all, it is being filtered. So there are a lot of filters that Spring Boot adds on behalf of you without even you explicitly mentioning it. And the authentication that you see actually works with a filter called authentication filter. So basic authentication filter. So how this authentication actually works and how this principle is being populated. Can someone tell me, okay, filter is someone who checks, okay, this password, username, password is correct. And then if you look at the source code, it finally checks whether this person is a right person. If it checks whether it's a right person, then it actually put that, okay, this is the person that we are looking at in the context of security. That's all fine. But where is this magic of principle being populated here? I did not even mention this. I did not create any new principal object. But actually speaking here, when it comes to this request, this principal object is populated. So it has my username, all that stuff. Credentials will not be there, obviously, for security reasons. But all the authorities, everything is there. Who is responsible for populating? Maybe I will give a clue. Who is responsible for populating method arguments? Who resolves method arguments? Is it filtered? So that's what we will see in people behind. Actually, it's very important to understand the people behind your request. So first of all, your request actually comes to your servlets, that dispatches servlet or whatever it is. And after that, it is going through a lot of filters. These filters might be security or non-security filters also. There is a significant difference between a security filter and non-security filter that we'll see in detail later. And then actually, there are people who we call them as resolvers. These resolvers may be resolving your localizations, that is called local resolvers, or it may be resolving your method arguments, that is called method argument resolver, or there might be template resolvers like that. So resolver is something that resolve a request to a specific concrete entities. So the principal object that you see is being resolved by method resolver. After that, you get this principal object being populated here. And this is how the actual basic authentication flow works. Any doubts so far? And we will build JWT from here. Now, that's the next step. But before we go there, are we clear about security filters? And in security filters, one strange thing that you will see, it's not actually the filter that we are talking about. For some reasons, they do not extend filter. They actually extend something called once per request filter. Can anyone tell me what is this once per request filter guarantees and why do we need it in application?
Is it once per session?
Once per request actually. Say for example, now if you are calling a request and that request calls another request as a chain, that time this logic will be executed again and again. But for security side, you want to resolve them only once. This logic is not necessary to be run again and again for request, and that's why you go with that. Okay, this much looks good. Let us see some of the mistakes that usually people do, and let us see the reason also, because once you know the reasons, you will know something very, very basic here. So now I send that. It's okay. So this is what it says. I removed my breakpoints. We understand this. Before we go to the JWT part, we will see.
I just have one.
Yes, please go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Holiday again. Just having one doubt. So you gave the password as password by default, but how come it has been encoded to some other thing when you got in the response? Like, where exactly is this happening?
Very good. Nice question, Aditya. Okay, so the thing is, you are encoding the password. Similarly, when Spring Boot checks it, it will encode it and then check whether the encoded version that you get and the encoded version that is there with the detailed service are same. And they are doing it for a reason that they don't want to store your password even in that classes directly. And that's why you see that encoding. Your doubt is here, right? In security config, you are actually encoding it, correct? Here, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah, password encoder.
Okay, so as a safeguard, they do not store your password directly, this framework. So they encode it. When the request comes also, they encode and compare. Basically,
okay.
With the encoded version, not with the actual passwords for security reasons. Very good question. Yeah. And these kind of disturbances are always
okay. Got it. Thanks.
Okay, and that's how we improve. Otherwise, I should have forgotten this. Good point. Okay, now where did we stop? Okay. Okay. Now before we go to that, actually I'm not passing this authentication now. Okay, I'm just going to send the request. It should throw me.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes, Sugandh.
Yeah, so actually I just wanted could you please give me a brief about the resolvers once again? I missed that, I think.
Okay, so
what is the role of resolvers?
Resolvers is something, take it in a general term, Sugandh. So resolver is something that you are saying you are kind of confused and you want to resolve that to some solutions. For example, in a controller case, sometimes you need, say, for example, principal, and then you put principal just as principal. You don't mention that this principle is coming from so and so, nothing. But it's your Spring Boot framework is going to call this person, right? At that point in time, Spring Boot should resolve that, okay, there is someone needs principle and I need to fetch this principle from somewhere and then populate this object.
Okay.
Sugandh?
Oh. Yes, I got it. Yes, got it.
Any new principle here and then passing it. You are actually not referencing, say for example, if you are seeing find usage of this method is not being used by you. This method is used by the framework. And when framework calls it, and this is going to call this method, and it should invoke this method with this particular parameter, but it should resolve this, right? Otherwise it cannot. So to resolve it, there will be resolvers. And these resolvers will intercept your function signature. And if they find something that they can resolve, they will resolve it. If they cannot resolve, that's the time that you see that exception being thrown by framework. That says, okay, I'm not able to resolve it. Clear?
Okay. And the question is like at framework level, which class is actually doing that? Like that is the class name is also the resolver class?
There are resolvers. For example, in this specific case, are you able to see my browser?
Yes.
My browser? Okay. So there are a lot of resolvers. In specific case, what we are talking about is method argument resolvers. There will be local resolvers and other stuff. Say, for example, parameter name resolvers. So here, if you see, if you want to resolve certain things, you can add resolvers, parameter resolvers. We should see official document. So handler method argument resolver. You can create your own argument. And this is actually a feature, very, very useful, but I mean, if we don't know this feature, right, sometimes it complicates your code. I have seen people, for example, particularly SaaS-based solutions, you want to store your tenant information for every request that you make. And I see people get handhold of it. They will pass HTTP request, and from request they will generate that tenant object and then they will show it. That's actually, it's unnecessarily complicating it. We want to hide this HTTP request from our controller as such. If you are using these frameworks properly, none of the controller should directly get hold of either HTTP request or HTTP response. And that's a beauty that comes from handle resolvers. In fact, that's a topic of its own. In specific case, I want to touch upon this.
Yeah, got it. Thanks for clearing that.
Yes. Okay, sure. Okay. Now let us see. Actually, I'm going to make a mistake. I'm just saying that okay, I want to understand who am I, but I'm not telling who am I. I'm not even giving my authorization. So I just cut my authorization. Now what should Spring Boot do? It should throw me an exception saying that boss, you need to pass through your credential, otherwise I will not answer your question. But this Spring Boot has a bug. See here, it tells me who am I, but I did not even pass authorization. And what's happening here? Can anyone tell me why Spring Boot is having this defect? Is it actually a defect?
Is it coming from cache?
Okay, cache one. Any other guesses?
Can you go back to that code, that controller?
The control is just dummy. Just if you give me principal, I'll pass principal. So what is happening here is when you are sending this request, the principal object is being populated by the framework. Somehow the Spring is populating my principal object. It should not be.
Is it going in cookie? On cookie, we retrieve it and send it as sort of header or something like that.
So by default, if you don't mention anything, who answered that it is caching?
And this is Mithun Satish.
Mithun. In a sense, you are actually right. And every web application servlet container that you have, in some way, they have a mechanism of caching in your web server, and that mechanism is called sessions. Now, what is happening is by default, if you don't mention anything, your authentication is created and stored in your session. Next time, just for performance reasons, it will not go and check whether this person is authenticated. If authentication is already there in the session, it is going to take it for performance reasons. So it's actually cache, but not directly cache. So what I'm going to say is, in my case, for my session management, I want to make it make session policies as stateless. And in IDEA, you have this problem. It will not do the hard deployment even with the dev tools that you have. So one side effect that, one way that you can do is you need to build your project again. Only when you build your project again, IDEA will reload your Spring Boot. Otherwise, dev tools behavior will break. So we'll just consider that as we go along. So now what is happening now is it is starting this again. Let us see. I'm asking the send request.
So this request that you passed again, so you did not pass any identifier. How did the container understand that it has to get it from this particular cache?
Okay, very good. We will see.
What is the identifier based on which?
Okay, so this is actually storing your, see, ultimately the security context holder should have your authentication. That's the idea. Okay, now you look at this one. If by default, as it is stored in session, if this authentication object, ultimately you are storing this authentication object, right? If it is there in session, right, Spring actually take it from session directly. Until and unless you specifically inform Spring Boot that I want to have my session management where my session creation policies is stateless. So do not store my session. That's the idea. Now, once you have that.
But if there are more than one request that are coming in,
If there are more than,
will I get the same response?
Yeah, this is not stored at the request level, right? This is stored at the session level. Session is common.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah.
But this doesn't sound right?
Yeah, but
Each request has a different thread, right? So here no need.
but Session is considered that it's a shared object. It's kind of a distributed caching. So it's common, it's shared across all your requests.
So if in case two users are trying to log in, Satish, then
In case two users, two sessions.
on the next request.
Two requests will be created. Like two sessions will be created. Sessions are created for user logins. Every time you log in, consider that every time you log in, if you are matching that with the modern day browsers, you have something called session storage, right?
Yes.
There is a session storage. If you store
Yes,
it in
yes.
session storage, even other user open, it will be there. But there is something called local storage. If you store it in local storage, it's local to your user. If you open another tab also, it will not be there. So you match that local storage as request, session storage as session in server side.
Okay. So on the initial call, like I'll be passing the username and password, and then
Yeah,
on
that
the next call we are ignoring it, right? So let's say if two users are trying to do the same approach, how would it identify the user and then bring in the principal?
Okay,
I think
because
Satish,
every
maybe
time
they're talking.
yes, it's me.
Yeah, sorry, this Sid, Satish, maybe they're asking about like the cookie management, like how basically that is sort of hidden away in the request because the client which you're using that is already sending cookies, not showing it to you, the servlet sends the response cookie. Maybe if you can touch on that, perhaps that'll probably answer that.
Also, the cookie is next thing. Actually, start from here. First is session. Then you can use cookie or you can use token. And cookie is something that every request you are sending. I will cover that actually. I will cover that after this. Also, that's a good point. But to answer this, session is something for now you consider that every time you log in with a specific user, that is the time session, which means every session is unique to the user. That's how these users are not considered. And this is before when you do the logout. Because when you do the logout from client side, it is very easy. You can just clear your session management. You need to do a logout from the logout operation. Okay. Now we will see that. Now as we go along, we'll see that now. Now let us just look at the same thing. Now I'm just going to pass my authentication again. It's me. Pass the proper credentials. Now I'm not going to pass this. This time I already informed the Spring Boot that I don't want to store anything in session. And every time you want to request something, you need to pass your credential. And this is how basic authentication stands. Any doubts so far? Mithun? Mithun, did I answer your question?
No, Satish. Yes, Satish, I'm good. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Now, there is no session now. Okay, it's all enough. No, because we don't want to pass this credential every time. I don't want to do this. This is a secret loophole. I want to get into the token-based system. So, any authentication that something that you are going to do, you are going to create a token implementation. That's what we are going to do now. So if you want to create a filter, now I want to create a filter. I created a filter. And what is this filter? Okay, before I create a filter, I create token util. Okay, now whenever you think about token, the JWT or any other implementation, you can actually, you are free to do your own implementations also. It's not necessary that everybody will be using token-based systems. You can use anything. Ultimately, you are responsible for providing one, from your user details, you need to create your tokens. Two, from your tokens, you need to create back your authentic. Now, we are going to start with the token-based implementations now. So when we start with token-based implementation, first thing first, we need to create a token. At the same time, we need to get authentication, both one side as well as other side should be possible. I implement an endpoint here. So I'm just going to put an, so here, I'm going to create an endpoint, and this endpoint is what going to create my token. So I want to create my token here. Once I create the token, we will see how to use the token later, but first we need to create the token. Now I have implemented a token util. I am not going to make it complicated. Let us consider that it's not even JWT. We will consider that it's a non-JWT token. Ultimately, this is all that I'm going to do. I will keep it very, very simple. If you are giving me the user detail, I will give you the token as get username. And this is my token. Consider that the dummy stupid token. Okay. Now we are going to get this from the token. Right? This token itself is a username. So I'm going to create. This is a reverse thing where I'm just going to return that. Okay, this is authentication if you're giving this username. Now let us see how this actually behaves. So one thing is you need to enable the token, and the filters can be added as based on the adder. So I'm going to say, see here I'm saying if I here it is. I'm going to put a filter now, and I'm telling Spring, before even you add this username authentication filter, I actually have a custom filter. Please, you add me as a filter. So I'm going in between the request and the controller now. So I'm going to be responsible for creating the token to authorization also. And I added the entry point where I'm just creating a token here. So I'm creating a token with this util. Okay. Now let us see how it actually behaves. Let us start the application. Stop and rerun. So this time, what happens is you are hitting this entry point. This entry point needs your credentials. You are passing these credentials, and it's going to give you the token. And just for understanding sake, what I'm doing here is I'm going to pass this as my token. So whatever response that you get out of this, from that response, I'm just going to the body of the response and get the auth token and set that as a bearer token so that it can be passed to your token filter. Now the first point here is when you create a token, this is the place where it is going to come. Send the request. Okay, yes, because here is the check. Can anyone tell me what is happening here? Actually, my security config says authorize request, any request authenticated. And it should be, okay. I already have HTTP basic, right? So that should be disabled. Otherwise, it will consider that HTTP basic. That's a mistake. So now I'm going to disable whatever, I mean, I'm not going to do a form-based logging. And cross-site reference I want to disable. Logout also I'm not going to have because there's no logout now. So these are the things that I want to remove. So I'm saying, okay, I want to create a token-based authentication now. CSRF I disabled. And logout is not required because I'm going to have my own logout. And the Spring Boot do not provide me any form logging. And session management also I don't need. And this is very important. You are saying, because this is like chicken and egg problem, where you are exposing an endpoint. This endpoint should be accessed. If you say in your config every request is authenticated, this endpoint cannot be accessed actually. So for that reason, I would say any matches for basically login related request, please permit all because they are, I mean, that's how they are going to get my token. And after that, please restrict everybody else. And that's what we are saying. Now with that understanding, I'm going to create the request now. So it comes to authorization header. There won't be any authorization headers. So it comes to your controller here, login controller here, and it provides your token. Your token is your user. Okay. Now with that token, what you want to do, you want to recreate that. So this is a token that will be available here. Even if you want to be very clear, consider that this is a token that I'm going to pass. I'm going to say okay here. Now if you send this request, now it should come to your filter. So how is it resolving it? It comes to your filter. See, it comes here. And from authorization, you are getting a token. The token is user. From the user, if you are passing it to the token util, and the token util is going to create that because it's a user. It's a straightforward, a dummy token-based authentication. Is it clear? Any doubts so far? Any doubts? Please stop me here. Now we are going to get into the JWT part. Okay. Now what is JWT? It's very, very simple, guys. So what we are trying to do here is we just created our own mechanism, but JWT is nothing but it's kind of an industry standard to create your tokens. So where it actually encrypts your token. And then when you decrypt it, you can get whatever that you want to get. So in JWT world, this is all called as claims. In Spring world, it's called authentication. In JWT world, it's called claims. Okay. So we will just change our logic here. Everything is same. The only difference is now in the generate token, you are going to JWT builder and you put your claims, that is your authorization related things. For now, we just skipped it. Subject is your username and you are saying issued at, you are setting an expiration date also, and then you are signing it with a secret key. And that's where you see the final token. And similarly, when it comes in the reverse, you stop everything and then you recreate the authentication from your claims, because claims will have your subject. That's the only difference that we make. With that, let us see how this token based authentication works. Nothing changed from the interface perspective. It is still same. The flow is same. Now it comes to the authorization header. It goes to the controller, and controller create this token. Now this token, even if somebody gets hold of this token, they cannot make any sense out of it. Consider that this token contains your username, your authorization, everything apart from your password. Make sure we do not encode password. Even if it's encrypted, it's actually against security principles. You should not put your credentials here. So it's everything minus your password actually. Okay. Now with that token, if you are passing it, your filter should actually unzip it. Now if you see this token is okay, because I hard coded it. I actually need to send from here. This time you see what is my token value. You see the token value, and the token value is your JWT token. And now this JWT token value is actually going to the get authentication method. Now in get authentication, you already parse the token that gives a JWT claim. Okay, now it is not working because I set the expiration as 1 minute. I'll make it 5 minutes. Now let it be 1 minute. You can always see it like this. I'm sending a request now. We no longer need this debugger. So created, immediately I access it. You get the response. Okay, now we will match with our cinema ticket example. Now, what is the expiration date does? So if you are creating this, right, this token-based authentication provides its own challenges. Can anyone guess the challenges that token-based authentication provides? There are two challenges that we see. Once the token is created, there is no way you can technically do a log off. Any doubts here? Please let me know. You cannot do any log off here. There are solutions to this log off we will see later. But is there any other problem with this token-based authentication apart from log off?
We can't block it if we want to.
Okay, we cannot block the user. Okay, excellent. Maybe shall we go a bit more generalized? Once the user authenticated, if you are removing, modifying, if you are adding a new feature to that user, adding a new role to that user, it is not possible because your token is written closed. Correct? Okay. Now consider that these two are the part and parcel of your token-based authentication. Now we are going to see the solutions to these two problems. These are all logical solutions. Let us not think that this is very complex technical solution or something. These are all very logical. As I keep saying, always match it with your film tickets or your T tokens and all those stuff. We will find a solution. Okay. One thing is, in case of film, what we did is we did it with an expiration policy. So we say, okay, the token that I'm giving you is valid for 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, like that. Okay. But now that is a problem, because sometimes if you want to create the token for a little longer time, then this is the problem. And you want to refresh the token so that it can be used later. For example, if you are buying an offer from Amazon, if the offer cannot be redeemed in a specific timeline, Amazon will tell you, okay, no problem, you can actually reclaim your offers again. That's basically a refresh mechanism. So you can go with expiration policy with refresh. And that's why you actually see the possibility, that is, you will pass another token called refresh token. That's also an encrypted token. So in case if this authentication token is expired, your request will throw you 401 that with the response saying that it's actually expired. You can make another refresh token inside and you can reclaim this token. This is the widely used approach for keeping a long-lived token and also with security in mind. Will that solve both my problems? No, actually, the second problem still stays. Okay, here, actually I forgot the exact terminology. As I keep saying, terminologies are complex than technologies. So this terminology I forgot, but maybe I will just put the terminology that I remember. I think this technique is called token obfuscation or something like that. Okay, so can anyone guess me what is this token obfuscation could be? And that usually provide your luxury of creating a log off with your behavior as well as modify your user roles with JWT also. What could be?
I think they block that token.
Actually, technically, you cannot block it because the token is directly going to the filter, right? But indirectly, yes, please.
When we are validating that time, you can, invalidate the token.
Yeah, but the token filter is the one which validating it, right? Right, Ravi? This is the one which is validating, correct? Okay.
No, I think we can put in the kind of block token kind of things.
Yeah, you can put, but let's just consider the logical perspective. This is the person who ultimately receives your token first. Okay, Ravi? Here it is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now, if you want to invalidate, for a simplicity's sake, this person cannot write anything actually. The filter is just for read. If you make the filter to write anything, right, it becomes unmanageable actually. So you want to keep this very simple. You want to do it something outside this also as a safety mechanism. You get what I'm saying? Yes, what you are saying, you can do it. There's no problem, Ravi. It's like not hard and fast tool. You can still do it, but maybe a better way. Shall we keep it that way, Ravi?
Yeah, agree.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So, is it like so?
What could be?
Like obfuscation is something like you don't give the real token, you give some sort of a placeholder token.
Excellent.
And you validate it.
Excellent.
Against.
Okay, so it's very, very simple. This JWT is actually, for performance reason, this is benefit, particularly if you are using microservices. I hate using this microservices. Everybody is using it nowadays. But consider that your company wants to do microservices. And between services, you make a call. And in those cases, your authentication service will be overloaded if you are not using token based. If you are using JWT tokens, all your services can be statelessly check their roles and responsibility themselves. For that reason, we'll keep it JWT tokens. But ultimately, your calls will go through an API gateway. And you can put this magic in your API gateway. What you can actually do is, you create the JWT, but do not pass JWT. And you create a JWT, store it, and create a JWT, create maybe an UUID or an encrypted key, because that is unique, and then store JWT in caching or something like that against UUID. Now this UUID becomes your token now. With this, if you want to invalidate now, it's very, very simple. Remove UUID. And if you want to recreate again, same flow, create new UUID and map it. Now, this gives you the flexibility of solving that problem of log off and modifying. This is another technique that people usually use apart from refresh token. So these are all the common techniques that we use. In case, actually, the most of the sample that you see, you will see that these are done from the API gateway. It may be Nginx or Zool gateway or whatever it is, but there's a better way to do it actually. How you can do that is, consider that you want to achieve the same thing, but you don't want to get into the API gateway and all those stuff. You want to achieve the same behavior with just Spring Boot. Can anyone tell me how to do that with Spring Boot, even in distributed locations? Ultimately, what are we trying to do? The core logic is creating an UUID, unique identifier. That's the key, and storing it. These are all the only complexities. Shall we do it with Spring Boot? Yes, you can do it. The easiest way to do that is Cache Manager. I can show one of the example that I did recently. This is if you are using Spring Boot alone as a solution. For example, if you are using an heterogeneous services where you are not just using Spring Boot, you are using some other Golang or something like that also, then this technique cannot be used. But if all your services are Spring Boot services, then you can very well use this technique. Not this. Slow. Okay. So very simple technique. The one that you see, this is basically a sample for multi-tenanted app. This will have better examples for method resolvers actually. Mithun, you asked about method resolvers, right? It's Mithun who asked about method resolvers, correct?
Oh no, it's someone else, Satish.
What are they checking, controller, okay. Controller, authentication controller. Now, very simple technique. So when you create a login, right, apart from creating it here, you actually store it in a cache. So once you store it in a cache, next time you can actually, okay, I got it. Where did I implement it? In security. Security config. See here, you can store it in a cache manager every time you generate a token. So see, if you look at it, it actually it doesn't pass the token directly. When you want to generate a token, so it gets that, and it generates a token, and it puts in the cache. So this is one of the techniques that we can use. And similarly, when you create it, you get it from the token, get it from the cache, unwrap it, use it. Yeah. So I think that's from JWT now. As I said, this is actually a bigger topic. We can keep building from here. Just remember these topics that we listen. Maybe I will cover cookie based also in the next time, because cookie based is also cannot be overlooked. If your application is using social security, if you are using a Google login or GitHub login as your application login, then they will use cookie indirectly. So we should be handling with cookies also. That's cookie handling in security. That we'll cover it later. But from the JWT standpoint, any doubts so far? This is all from me for today. Any doubts so far? Please ask your doubts. I will clarify.
One more thing, Satish, like we have different flavors of JWT, like JWT is there, JWK is there. So if you want to give some difference between both of them.
JWT?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, tell me, Ravi.
JWT is there, JWK is there, JWKE is there. I think there are some other flavors are there of JWT.
Yeah. There are a lot of things, but JWK, if I remember, that is for your that is for your certificate related items. I think I'm not sure. I need to check it. But from JWT side, this is all that I remember. This is all that we need to do. You need to take a JWT is basically very simple. It's nothing to do with your security. It's basically creating a secured JSON encoded credence claims. That's it. So the JWK and all the stuff is a different things altogether. That's what I'm saying. But we can cover that in next time also. In fact, there is something called security manager that we need to take a session from Nicholas, who talked about Hazelcast later. That will cover in detail about those topics. But JWT is very simple. JWT is all about this. That's it.
One basic question. Who is responsible for creating this token? So in this demo, I think you created it yourself within our app. But typically, how does it happen in an enterprise? Is it a different service that is going to be responsible for creating this token?
Okay. So it depends, Ram. It's ultimately about your business use cases. Whether we do it or a server creates it, the logic is same. If you are creating multiple services and you want to enforce a single authentication mechanism for your product or your organization, usually these will come from external solutions. And that is a place where nowadays there are solutions like IAM, Identity Access Managers, like Auth0, all these people. So they will basically, you are outsourcing your security requirement to those people. And also, if you are creating an application, it's a self-contained application yourself. There is no need to go with that extra because that costs you something, right? Extra infrastructure, extra. Yes. So it doesn't work in case if you're doing it. So for a simple project, it's always better you do it yourself. And that's the reason. In fact, that's a very nice question. What you see now, for our understanding sake, I removed a lot of other things that I did actually. Maybe for Ram's question. So as I keep saying, a good question deserves a good answer. I will just reset everything. Git pull. Even if it takes time, we will go through that. Okay, Ram, you see here, you see there are a lot of files being added here, right, Ram? Lot of new files. Okay, now Gurukulam is the application. Okay, Gurukulam is an application that we are building. Gurukulam is a free online portal, and so that is for that. Okay, so it has its own functionalities and all those stuff. Now, even if you want to create it within yourself, you don't need to confuse it with your application. You see two folders here, right? There is starter. As we keep discussing we discussed in one of our previous sessions, the advantage of using Spring Boot is when you use resolvers, when you use auto configuration, when you use starters. So these starters are the one which is reusable module. So now I outsourced my security Swagger is for documentation related things into starter form. Later I can safely move that into either a jar file or a separate service also easily. But my application will not be tampered later actually. So an ideal approach is we usually do security as a separate module. Sometimes we embed it, sometimes we remove it. But that flexibility we will create it within the design. So this is your core functionalities, but security I will add it as a starter. Later I will move this, I will make my own starter. This is matching both the sides.
Satish, in Spring Boot, suppose take an example, we have a Spring Boot web starter. Like that, we can also create one starter.
Yes, in fact, that is how we should do. If you are doing a large application, right? It's always better.
Yeah.
There are two things, right? Your application use cases or your application use cases. If there is any non-functional requirement, cross-cutting concerns like security, logging, documentations, all this kind of requirements, right? Usually it's better you put them inside the starter and then share it as a separate jar file.
Okay, in that main we need, okay. No, in the starter means it's the same project, right? So
no, it can be, and now I just package it as a starter. But actually speaking, if the application becomes bigger, this part that you see, I will separate it. Only this part that you see will be there in my project. This part I will make it as a separate jar, include as a dependency, like Spring Boot starter. I will say,
okay, yeah, okay, got it.
Sadish, I have just one doubt. So whether the course exception, course error and all will be handled by this circuit layer whichever you have implemented,
Which
or
except
is course something different?
cast except, okay, you are talking about
No,
CORS,
Cross origin resource
CQRS.
sharing.
Yeah, yeah. CQRS, you can configure it in your security config. Who asked this question?
Myself, Aditya.
Aditya, thanks. I actually forgot that actually disable then course, right? This one.
Yeah.
Okay, so this also you can configure. In fact, cars is a very interesting area. If you're using front-end application, you'll face this problem. You need to configure it, especially in the Spring latest version. The way that you configure cars is different. There might be a number of samples, but sometimes they are confusing. Based on whatever I did, what I understood is, if you want to configure cars, right, the easiest way is actually add a cars filter. I think I had it. You need to add a thing like cars filter. I used cars filter for some specific case, so you forgot it. But this is how you configure. This is one way. Or sometimes they will use this cars also, like session management. It has cars configuration source. You can create a new cars configuration source, and then you can configure. So just to revisit, as I said, sometimes security is actually overlooked. We cannot actually we cannot blame individual developers for this reason, because this is not going to be part and parcel of everyday development work. The controller is what we usually do, and mostly security. By the time we join the project, someone might have copy pasted from somewhere and then created a security. But it's always better if we know these basics. If you face any security issues, you can see that copy pasted code, what are the problems that this can throw. Particularly, this is very relevant for the next few months, few years at least. The reason being, you might always expect that someone copy pasted from the legacy code and added some workarounds around it, and then created a patch, and then create all the complexities in your application. If you know all this, you can relatively solve it. And particularly, I just want to end the session with two very common mistakes that I have seen, even with the samples that we see in the internet, most widely used sample that we see in the internet. I saw that there are few very common mistakes. As we have taken a session from the basics, now you yourself can answer me what this can actually cause a problem here. I have seen in some places, ultimately what we need to do is we keep it very, very, just a simple logic, right? So here in the token utility, when you do a reverse, you want to create an authentication, right? It's very common that people consider that, okay, I want to create this authentication filter. Why should I do all this? Rather, I actually have a user detail service. If I have a user detail service, so for example, user details service, and then I can call load user by name, and then I can give the subject. Something like this. Just a high level I'm putting, okay, excuse me, it's not actually correct way to do it. Okay, now something like this. So basically they contact this, and it actually looks very nice on paper. Can anyone tell me what is the problem here? So when you do a reverse, when you want to create an authentication from your token, from the token, I can actually get my username because that's a subject, right? And then with that, if I call the user detail service, this guy, no, it's just one line of code. They will give, okay, if I want to make it even clear, I can just say private user. This you can see in many production applications also. At least I have seen it in many applications. Where they will simply do an auto where because it's code simplicity, right? Why should I do a lot of complexities and all those stuff? Let us keep it very, very simple. Keep it simple principle. Okay. Now I'm just going to load the username. I don't need to pass this kind of extra things. No? Simple code. Everything nice? Good? Or any problem here? Any guess? You can create an authentication from here actually. Any issues? So now the beauty is you will get the username. Of course, you should not pass your credential, and you will get your authorities also. So this is how your Spring Security that all the authorization behavior will maybe I'll give a clue. There is a performance problem here. Can anyone identify the performance problem here? This line that you call can severely cause performance issues.
Whether it will search for the entire username in the database.
The whole
or the in-memory database.
Yeah, the whole purpose we want to go to token-based system is to make it stateless. If it is stateless, once it is created, and it should be reversed to itself. Yes. So this is against the principle. Of course, this will work, and this is what you see in the many samples. I don't want to open the samples with all the respect to the author. They put everything right actually. But in one place that I see a common mistake is this. So if you see someone doing it, just tell them that just by removing this one line can greatly improve your overall application performance. Because remember, these filters are going to be called for each and every one of your requests. And you can save a lot of performance. Particularly, be very careful when you implement any filters. And filters are so costly. And if you're putting anything in filter, it should be as small as possible, both by memory as well as performance. And this is a very, very common mistake that we see. That's one. And the other mistake that I see is this JWT is actually writing your authorization also into your token. Sometimes if you create a system which has hundreds and 200s of roles, what complexity that you can create for the token? If your system has more and more and more and roles, you want to go to fine grain control, add user, remove user, change username, all these are granted authorities. And you want to embed them into your JWT. At what cost that you are embedding it?
There will be far too many combinations for each combination of roles.
Yes, and also ultimately a very simple calculation is the more data that you put, the more of the IO size that you are going to have for your token. The token size will keep increasing unnecessarily. And this token is being passed over the wire for every call. That's unnecessary IO overhead. So stay away from that. Do not put all the data, put as minimum data as possible. Otherwise, we are indirectly doing it, because I have seen some production applications which will create the token which is so complex, to like for pages, I don't know, unnecessarily. And we should stay away from that. These are all the watchful things that we need to do. Maybe your application might be having one of these two problems. You can check it yourself. You can tell people if they understand, let them correct it. If they don't, just tell them. That's the idea. Okay. So that's all from us today. If there is any doubts, we will answer. Otherwise, we are good. Anyone wants to give any announcements, please go ahead. Otherwise, I will give my announcements from our side.
Satish, maybe on the next session, or if we have time, like, can you throw some light on LDAP SAML-based authentication, Satish?
Sure. No, that's all. Like now going to the, I mean, we can when we say that it's advanced actually, but once we know this basics, right? That's all very straightforward. But definitely we'll consider one session. Logically, after this, I want to cover this cookie based with OAuth and all those stuff. That's next, and after that I will cover LDAP also.
Hi, I joined a bit late actually. So this is a recorded session. Will it be available in the meetup? Could I access it later?
Yes, it should be available. But just to see, did I record everything? Is it recorded?
I see it's recorded.
It's recording, right? Okay, because I got disconnected in between. Okay. If it is recorded, very good, very nice. Yeah, I will share it actually. We will share it sometime later.
Okay.
Actually,
thank you.
We have a lot of videos actually. It's my problem. I am supposed to edit it. I delayed it actually for the last 4 weeks. I will edit and then upload everything.
Okay. Thank you.
Satish, the one question I was gonna want to ask is, like, you were saying that we can keep some information in the token itself, so that to keep it stateless rather than to reach out to a service over and over.
Correct.
Then wouldn't you be trusting the token to have the right info, and the token is coming from a client, so it could be manipulated?
Which one, Girish? Can you repeat?
Were you suggesting sometime back that you can keep some info, you should not keep credentials, of course, but some info that you might need in the token itself, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So, but since the token is coming from an client, it could potentially be manipulated also, right? So if you rely on the token for giving information rather than to talk to a authoritative service, like you're saying that there is that performance issue because of a latency, it'll go talk to a service to get the user details once again to retrieve, versus it could have actually extracted it from the token itself.
Correct. Okay, now this is a very good question, Girish. Okay, so if I just understanding your question, Satish, you are saying for performance reasons on the server side, they don't need to talk to the service again and again. Rather, they can actually, from the token itself, they can reverse. They can reverse and then get the user details. Why is it not applicable for the front end? Why a front end should not decrypt and then understand itself? Is that your question, Girish?
No, I'm not saying why the front end should not decrypt it. What I'm saying is that you're assuming that the front end, you're kind of trusting the front end is giving you a legitimate token without messing with the data. Where there is a malicious client who has given you a token with some falsified information.
Correct. So ultimately, Girish, the token is an encrypted token. Okay, if they want to tamper the token, say for example, if you add any tokens, anything in between also, right? If they tamper it, there is an encryption decryption happening in JWT, right? So when you decrypt it, you are not going to make it as a valid token, right? The moment someone touches this token, it becomes invalid. Correct, Girish?
Okay, got it. I was thinking it's an encoded token. You're saying it's an encrypted token.
Yeah, encoded. They're actually encrypting it, right? So this is not the actual data, right? This is not, by no way they can directly get what is this until and unless they specifically choose the algorithm that you used and the secret that you used. For example, if I'm using this algorithm, it's a common algorithm. I used two things here actually, Girish. One is, see, look at signature algorithm here. And then I'm using a secret also here. And only when I know this, I can actually decrypt because I'm using the secret here. But this brought in another interesting question also. I actually left out, Girish. So maybe sometimes people might ask you this question. Okay, the technique that we discussed, token obfuscation and all this stuff. If you're using that technique, the front end will not, you see, for example, now if the front end knows the secret and the algorithm, rather we have this, tell me, Girish, if this, you're not able to relate it, for everybody's also, please add me, please ping me. So here, this is the place where you're giving the who am I, okay? Or you can also say front end, I already gave you the token and I told you the algorithm and secret also. In that case, can't you decrypt and then find it yourself? Of course, front end can do. Correct, Girish.
Any logic.
Yeah, that's one possibility. Yeah, correct. But the problem is, at what cost? Because nowadays in front end, you can actually have a local offline storage, there is session storage and all this stuff. The cost is, even if you expose this endpoint is not going to be called again and again, right? So it's going to be called once and they are going to store it in the session storage. For that reasons, when we balance it, it's always better not to give that flexibility to the front end. So front end should not actually decrypt it. Don't pass the secrets or the algorithm informations to front end. That's an anti-pattern. Is it clear?
Yeah, and also anyway, the front end is running in a browser, right? So someone can always siphon out that script and start getting to know your secrets and your implementation data.
Correct. So it's always better, in security, right? It's always lesser the information, better the security. So try to, and also it's better the server handles, the better the security is, because server is your party. Browser, you cannot take a control. This specifically, I have seen some applications where they do this kind of authorization checks in the front end, React applications, Angular application especially, because they give all the flexibility. Without, there is a check actually. Even if you do it in React, that is good actually. But at the end of the day, it's not an excuse not to do that authorization checks in your server layer. that's an anti-pattern. It can actually, it's as if like, secure.